We can debate whether or not this is a rivalry, but there have been some historical performances for Tennessee in the South Carolina game. And you can go all the way back to 1929, Caleb. That was a pretty historical performance by a pretty incredible player in Tennessee football history.
Correct. There's been quite a few. So 1929, Tennessee played South Carolina. Gene McEver had 5 touchdowns. By the way, not 5 throwing touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns, a record that still stands to this day for Tennessee in a game. Nobody has carried the ball into the end zone 5 times, whether it be receiving or rushing or combination, in Tennessee football history. He would have won the Heisman that year if the Heisman existed. So the Heisman curse for Tennessee goes back to 1929, where the
Heisman curse existed before the Heisman existed.
It did, because the year there was no debate that he was the best player in football that year. There was no debate. He would have won the Heisman. So Gene McEver getting 5 touchdowns started a trend of Tennessee football players really making history with their performances against South Carolina.
All right, fair enough. Now, let me ask you this. You've got the T. Martin game in there. I was at that game. He set the record for consecutive completions. I thought a lot of those were swing passes, screens, easy passes used to get that record that they thought would be good for T, who was viewed as a running quarterback after Peyton Manning. I kind of thought that was a lot like Brett Favre just laying down on the ground and getting sacked by Michael Strahan to get the sack record. To me, that was one of the most hollow records that I've ever seen or been a part of.
Dave, I think you're short selling T. Martin.
Okay.
I think when he was pursuing the record, I think like once he hit like 10 for 10 or 15 to 15, yes, at that point, the last like 10 passes, they were doing that because they were blowing out South Carolina and they could. I don't think they started the game doing that. And here's the numbers. T. Martin's 23 of 24 in that game for 315 yards. That's over 10 yards an attempt. That's over, if I'm getting my math right, that's over 12 yards an attempt. Now, if your theory held, then he would have had like 6 or 7 yards an attempt. But he averaged over 12 yards an attempt.
Just watching that game towards the end, it looked like they wanted to get him the record. Now, it doesn't change how I feel about T. Martin. I think that T. Martin was a great, great college quarterback.
No, I agree. At the end, and Martin admitted it as much. He talked about that David Cutcliffe called a screen pass that made no sense for him to get the record. That part's true. But Dave, for him to be approaching the record, they weren't doing that when he was approaching the record. They decided that when they realized he was getting close to the record. But before that, there was a lot more vertical passes. I think, again, the game. You think they went into that game in the first 5 passes in the first quarter? They're like, oh, he's going to break this record. Let's do it.
No, but I thought there was a clear moment that I can't remember exactly when it was. Maybe it was mid third quarter, maybe it was late third quarter. I thought that was a clear moment where they were going to make sure that he got the record. And then
that's fine, but to that point, he was averaging over 12 and a half yards an attempt.
I agree. It's like you get 2 aces and you split them and you double down and you split them again. I mean, it fell into their lap and it worked out for them. The other one that you point out, as far as historical performances that Tennessee should remember against South Carolina, is by a guy named Josh Dobbs, who just got his first win in the NFL, and Dobbs was money on that day. 23 of 40 for 301 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception, as Tennessee beat South Carolina 45-42. Maybe they would have been better off losing this game so that people saw Butch Jones for what he really is, but give Josh Dobbs credit. He doesn't think like that. He also ran for 166 yards on 24 carries. That was an all Dobbs all game, and 3 touchdowns. That was an all Dobbs all game.
Yeah, he had 5 total touchdowns and 467 total yards. I believe this was the first ever 300, 100-yard game ever by a Tennessee quarterback, and Dobbs actually did that like 4 more times. Hendon Hooker did it, I think, once or twice, but Dobbs has like 4 or 5 of those games on his resume, 300, 100 games. And I'm saying 300 passing, 100 rushing.
Then you got Dustin Colquitt in 2003. I was at that game. What did Dustin Colquitt do in 2003? I don't even remember.
Oh, he averaged. This was a really ugly game for Tennessee. They won 23-20 in overtime on a fade pass from Clausen to James Banks. There's a rumor that when they shook hands in midfield, there was no proof of this, but there was a rumor that Philip Fulmer told Lou Holtz, you should have won that game. But I don't know if that's true. But
yeah, and Lou Holtz responded, "Well, suffer and succotash, that's your pride."
But Dustin Colquitt averaged. He averaged 51.7 yards per punt on that game on 7 punts. The only reason it got to overtime was because Tennessee dominated field position. He had 5 50-yarders. He had a 63-yarder that went out of bounds at the South Carolina 2. Their average starting field position was on their own 12-yard line. It's the greatest game ever. There's 2 games that I can say a punter won the game for Tennessee. One is South Carolina. The other one was later that year, Dave, Miami. Dustin Colquitt won that Miami game by himself. He was the MVP.
Yeah, fair.
That punt to Sean Taylor was the greatest punt of all time that Taylor fumbled.
Yes. Smoky Mountain Red said, did you say no one had 5 TDs rushing and receiving or just running in the game? What was that stat you threw out there?
No one had 5 TDs rushing or receiving or a combination of the 2 in Tennessee history outside of Gene McEver in 1929. So basically carried the ball in the end zone 5 times. That's the way I looked at it. No one carried the ball into the end zone 5 times.
So not passing is what you're...
Yeah, not passing.
Okay.
Think about it in fantasy. You get more points if you carry it into the end zone than if you throw for it.
Has anybody else done that since?
No one's done that since for Tennessee.
Wow. Good stuff. All right. He's Caleb Calhoun, and I trust him on that. I'd probably look it up after the show with anybody but him. But if he says it, I certainly believe it. So we will have that the big wrap. That'll be brought to you by Herald Group Security Solutions after the game. We'll also have that.
Wait. Jalen Hyatt last year.
Jalen Hyatt last year. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, Jalen Hyatt last year. Excuse me. That was the first one since. So
okay.
My significant apologies on my end. I don't know how I forgot that one.
We always overlook Jalen Hyatt is what we did.